Thank you. Thank you so much for coming tonight. My name's Christine Muir. I'm the community librarian here at Cary. I've been here about 2 years now, so you may have seen me at some of these programs. And if not, welcome. I'd like to ask everyone to take a minute to silence your cell phones, please, so we don't interrupt what I think is going to be a very powerful program. If anyone needs an assistive listening device, there are a couple on the table in the back. And also, if anyone has any trouble seeing the presentation and you want to follow along live, you can see Mona in the back row and she can email it to you right away. Or you can see me when I'm done talking up here and I can email it to you right away. LexMedia is here to film the event tonight. They will be focusing on the screen in front of me as well as the panelists when they come in. But if anyone in the audience is concerned about filming, you can come see me afterwards. I'll be sitting in the back and just let me know if you want to make sure you're out of camera view. We are not going to have a formal question and answer session tonight, but we will try to wrap up the program in time that you can mingle individually with each other and with the panelists if you'd like to. So if you have any questions or things you want to discuss, there will be some time at the end, just not at a public forum. And on the table in the back, there are some refreshments. There's also an evaluation form at the end of the program if you want to take a minute to let us know what you thought about it. You can fill those out and return them. There's also a curated book list, which you're welcome to take a copy of. And if I run out of copies, just let me know. I can email it to you later. There's also some information, which I think Tony will probably talk about later, from the Health and Human Services. So there's some material in the back that you can help yourself to after the program as well. And with that, I will turn things over to the Human Rights Committee.
Hi, good evening. My name is Fang Yin. I'm the member of Human Rights Committee in Lexington. So let's get started. Here on the slide, the first slide are some issue that we will be addressing tonight. Who we are, who we really are. We continue to live with the impact of racism today. You know, I hate it when people say, but this is Lexington. The point is, things happen elsewhere also happen in Lexington, and we all live with the impact of that. Many residents with disability in town continue to struggle daily in order to function in Lexington, whether it's a student going to school for an education or simply a person going to town for a cup of coffee. For example, 90% of artisan population are either unemployed or underemployed, which is such a waste of human resource. And shame on us for not utilize their talent. Stereotype exists in Lexington too. What a shock. I would like to remind people on how we interact with others. our action or inaction can and will hurt people. Religion. Recently, we have seen an increase of crime against various religious groups. Close to home in Arlington, last May, a rabbi's house was the target of 2 fires in just 5 days. And it's also hard to believe that we are almost in year 2020 and women are still getting paid less than their male counterpart for performing the same work. While the LGBTQ community have our support, Lexington still have a long way to go to be more inclusive. The data is really alarming, and the LGBTQ community can use our support to help Lexington to be a safe place for them. Okay, now we will move on to panel. I will hand it over to Tanya, our vice chair.
Thank you, Fang Yang. That was awesome. If anyone can't hear me, let me know. All right, I'm going to ask our panelists to come up and give you a brief overview of each person. Our panel compromises our friends and neighbors who have experienced harm due to the visible identity, and they're going to tell us how that their visible identity or presentation, and they're going to tell us about how that impacts them personally, and it also impacts their inclusive caring circles. So Peter Lee, who's in our middle here, is a 28-year-old resident of Lexington, his wife of 33 years, and they have raised 4 sons, all graduates of the Lexington public school system. Peter was always active as a volunteer, perfectly suited for Lexington. He has coached his son's sports teams, served on numerous town boards and committees, and has been a member of town meetings since 2007. In 2016, Peter earned a prestigious Lifetime Volunteer Service Achievement Award from the nationally recognized President's Volunteer Service, PVSA. His participation with the Chinese American Association of Lexington, often called CAL, over the past 25 years has involved a wide range of roles, including election as spokesperson, first president, and currently a member of the Executive Council. Victoria Buckley, on our far end, is the chair of the Commission on Disability and town meeting member. She is a master level clinician who has been working as a psychiatric occupational therapist for over 35 years. She travels on missions to Uganda and Mexico to help children with disabilities. Victoria and her husband have raised 4 children in the Lexington Public Schools, and she is a tireless advocate for the rights of those with disabilities. Rabbi Lerner, right here next to me, is the chair on the Commission of Disability and a Town I'm sorry, I just read Victoria again. Rabbi Lerner has served as a spiritual leader for Temple Unit in Lexington since 2004, and he is a past president of LICA and the Massachusetts Board of Rabbis. Jeffrey Toronto, next to Rabbi Lerner, is a longtime member of the Lexington Human Rights Committee and has a mission to stop discrimination of all kinds. Amber, please say your last name for me.
Iqbal.
Okay, thank you. Iqbal, so I don't damage that, is originally from Pakistan and is a resident of Lexington for the past 9 years. She likes to engage in community work and especially with the goal of fostering interfaith understanding. And Jay John, in the middle, Johns, is a non-binary transgender Southern transplant. You may already know them as one of your friendly neighborhood children's librarians. I think I didn't miss anybody, did I? All right, that is our awesome panelist. They're each going to share with you a personal story. So I am gonna ask everyone in the room for a little bit of empathy because sometimes it is hard to share stories that have been very impactful in your life. And there are tissues in the back, and anyone can pass the box, and there's a few up here for anyone. For the panelists, there are 2 microphones. Please just pass them along. You can take them out if you need to. Rabbi Lerner is being very generous with his time and has to dash off, so if he just ups and leaves, please respect that he just has so many places to be that he is being kind and generous enough to give us his time. As are everyone on the panel to share their stories. So I'm gonna let Rabbi Lerner start, and I will ask some questions after you all have your story. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your introduction to the other panelists and to all those who are here. I was asked to share something about anti-Semitism, and it's strange because in the year 2019, I wouldn't think that we would need to be focused on increases in anti-Semitism as we just saw in the presentation. But the reality is that anti-Semitism is on the rise. Incidents in our own schools, swastikas being drawn in various places, yet more and more of these kinds of experiences shared with me. And Jews in the United States, for whatever reason, even though making up a fairly small percent of the overall population, make up some 12% of all the hate crimes committed, which is way out of proportion with the population and the #1 most targeted religious group here in the United States. And we see this especially among Orthodox Jews. Here in Lexington, I'm fortunate to say that I haven't had many experiences. The only one that I can think of is when I was walking one night down a Concord Road and someone saw me with their kippah, with my kippah, and they kind of slowed down their car and said F Jew as they, out their window. Not enough to make me feel, that upset, but clearly something designed to intimidate and to frighten you. And, I think that's the kind of reality of the world that we live in, and that we only see that on the rise. The story I wanted to share took place many years ago when I was growing up on Long Island. And my father, like myself, is a rabbi, and was a rabbi in a synagogue. And like many churches that have parsonages, homes for their clergy, we lived in a synagogue parsonage near the synagogue, and everyone knew in the neighborhood that this was the rabbi's home. And the incident that took place was on the eve of Halloween, when I went to sleep as a child and woke up the next morning to open the front door to get the newspaper and to find an unbelievable scene, to see the whole front lawn strewn with toilet paper all up and down the lawn, and a putrid smell, which had come from the raw eggs that had been thrown at the house, and drawn on the front wall were Nazi swastikas on all over the house. And I'll never forget that image. It's kind of seared into my mind, and really caused not only a trauma of that experience and the feeling of hate that my home would be targeted, but also really created a dislike for me of Halloween for many years. Did not want to have to do anything with a holiday where people saw that that was part of the way they wanted to celebrate the day, and still remains. I'm blessed to live on a block that has a lot of different people today here in Lexington, and have gone out with my son on Halloween to a different kind of experience. But that memory really has seared into the core of who I am to this day.
Thank you.
My name is Jeffrey Tronto. I wanted to read my story to you right here. I am part of the Human Rights Committee. We work to prevent discrimination in the Lexington community. I have felt discrimination numerous times. I have been treated differently because of a diagnosis that is clearly not my fault. I have been bullied by different people because of my disability. The people who have bullied me were mainly my classmates from the public school system here in Lexington many years ago. However, I have been treated wrongly by others as well. There was a time, not too long ago, when I was walking down Bedford Street in Lexington, and some adolescents started to harass me because of my disability. My mission for my career in human rights is to protect the rights of many and stop discrimination of all kinds, including the rights of people with disabilities, but not limited only to them. I want to see the day when people with a disability are given equal rights to fair employment, to fair housing, to the right to exist without being bullied, and to have equal rights under the Constitution of the United States. People who have a mental disability are more often the victims of the violent crimes rather than the ones who commit them. There is a dangerous stereotype. It is very harmful and wrong. I appreciate that you have given me the time to share my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Jay, and you can usually find me across the hall over there in the children's room, but I am here tonight as a representative of myself, not of the library. And I am pretty lucky that, nothing too scary or terrible has really happened to me in my life, either in South Carolina or here in Massachusetts. And I do know that a lot of that is because I've been shielded by my race in my class, as well as my masculine presentation. So trans feminine people face a much different kind of level of violence than people who go the other way, so to speak. And since I do work in the children's room, the majority of my interactions with people here in Lexington are with children and their parents. And I think that I have a pretty in-between appearance. I feel like people either assume I'm a man or assume I'm a woman about 50-50. And it's really nice actually when the kids who are young enough to not be embarrassed are just forthright and ask, oh, are you a boy or a girl? And sometimes they will accept the simple answer of, oh, I'm neither, I'm a non-binary transgender person, and then they just kind of go, okay. Do you have any diary of a wimpy kid? And so that's, probably the most pleasant interaction you can imagine. But sometimes they will refuse the simple answer and really start pushing back. And there was an instance once when I was in a book club with elementary age kids. And so they started asking, are you a boy or a girl? And I said, no, I'm not either. I'm a non-binary transgender person. What did you think of this comic? But they, wouldn't come off of it and were, saying, well, that's not a real thing, like show me that exists in a book. Which so I was like, well, we're not gonna do that right now, but I can show you the 300, the section, where we do exist in books, but we don't have to exist in books to exist in the real world. And so, I'm an adult and they are children, so that those particular interactions really don't weigh too heavily on me, but my real fear is that a parent will get a hold of the information that I'm queer or transgender and will decide that they think that it's inappropriate for me to be interacting with their children at all, because, gender identity and sexuality have a history of being pathologized and considered paraphilias or perversions. And it really wasn't that long ago that it was illegal to be homosexual and work for the government, and teachers were getting fired for being gay. And we still actually don't have protections in most states. We do have legal non-discrimination protections here in Massachusetts, but with question 3 last year, it was shown that that's not necessarily permanent and forever. And it was really upsetting to see the no on 3 signs that were scattered around Lexington here. So my real thing is just kind of this underlying current of anxiety that someone will decide that it's not okay for me to work with children, when that's what I'm good at and that's what I enjoy. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Peter Lee. I'm happy to be part of the panel, and thanks to the committee for organizing an event like this. I'm here with the Chinese American Association of Lexington. We were organized in 1983 to represent Asians, to educate and help assimilate. Things have changed. Like the rabbi, I really have been very fortunate not to have experienced any egregious hate behavior. Mostly when I was a kid, I think, was my experiences such as it was. I think times have changed a lot in the 1 or 2 generations. I was born in the 50s and grew up in the 60s, and so kids that want to make fun of you because you're different probably were not terribly, serious, or they didn't have any, what did they do? They, tried to mimic, what they thought was Chinese words, or, sing-songy kind of, kung fu type of things. And, I wasn't fluent at the time, but my parents immigrated from China, and so I understood what Chinese sounded like, and if we misbehaved, you definitely heard, some Chinese, that was just sort of the way it was. Growing up, so in elementary school, people would try and make fun of the fact that you're Chinese, and they would try and make noises and sounds, and it was not a big deal. I would look at them probably more confused than anything else. It's like, dude, what are you doing? Nobody does this, so one time, 2 times when I was in elementary school, I think I went to a parochial school, so there were nuns, and I think there was a kid actually was making fun of my sister. So, that was a situation where I thought, that's not cool. So we had a little fight, such as it is when you're, 10 years old, rolling around on the playground, and broken up by the nuns, which is kind of disappointing. But our penalty was go to church. And we were forced to go to church for the rest of the week. And then when people were making fun of that I was different, I went and told my parents, and I said, what do I do? And they said, well, if you want, we can teach you to write some Chinese characters and pronounce, and education, and I thought, okay, let's do that. And so, the characters did not look good. The pronunciation, I guarantee you, did not sound good, but it was, education for an elementary grade class, my classmates, and my teacher appreciated it, and I think my classmates appreciated it. So it wasn't that big a deal. I basically chose to ignore it, and I thought that was kind of the best way to go, and share some culture, because I think that also, some people, they want to make fun of you. Maybe they're not that educated themselves, or they're a little ignorant, and maybe they're, they honestly don't know what's going on, or they just want to get a rise out of you, see what your reaction is, and if you don't do anything, they don't know what to do either. So it just sort of goes away. But again, times have changed, and I can't imagine the kids nowadays what they have to go through. I mean, when I was growing up in Winchester, I was the only Asian kid in my class of 350. So my kids growing up in Lexington, if you didn't have 2 or 3 Asian kids in each class, it was like, wow, what's going on? And so now you probably have, 4 or 5. I mean, all my kids have graduated, so I don't know, but it's very inclusive, very accepting, and I guess Lexington Public School Systems is kind of a magnet for people that appreciate good education. And so we have a lot of diversity, and that's, I think, a wonderful thing. So, and again, you can't underestimate the harmful effects of, the hateful or hurtful behavior. But, especially adults, in society, I think kids tend to be more inclusive, more understanding, and more accepting than some adults. So I think kids left to their own devices probably aren't too bad. And I personally like to have more of a glass half full type of an attitude, a positive attitude. And I think children are smarter than we give them credit for. They're more resilient. And when my kids were growing up, it was more a matter of, tell me how you feel, what happened, rather than, this is terrible, you should do something about this, we've got to take action, it's horrible. I think they're very resilient, and they will tell you, I didn't like this, or this is what happened. And, so that kind of discussion, I think that kind of conversation is very helpful. And in Lexington, it does happen, but to a lesser extent. So I would say, to try and, minority opinion, if you will, to try and see the glass half full. Being Asian, being different is, I don't know, I guess sometimes you get that model minority complex, so we don't have it as bad as other people, perhaps, but at the same time, I think trying to be positive, trying to share culture, try and educate, and really cherish the diversity, I think that would be something that I would advocate for and recommend that people do. So.
Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Amber Iqbal, and as you can see visibly, I'm a Muslim. And before moving in Lexington for good, we were living in Bedford, and we lived in this small community, townhouse community. And since my children were very young, there used to be a bunch of kids playing outside. And I being one of those helicopter moms, I always wanted to watch my kids. So I used to watch them every day, and the rest of the parents in the community, seeing me that I was there all the time with my children, they completely trusted me with them, and they knew that their children were safe with me. So I used to watch them, and and I had made good friendship with all my neighborhood people, sending them treats once in a while. I used to do some desi cooking, if you've had biryani and samosas and all those things. I used to cook once in a while, not that much. Once in a while I used to cook and send them around the neighborhood. So I had made pretty good friendship with all of them. So I have lived there for about a year when that news broke on all media channels that Osama bin Laden has been captured and killed in Pakistan, and it was a shock, and I was in disbelief because, to be very honest, I had been there. I just came to US just 4 years ago. I got married here and I just came 4 years ago. And the Pakistan that I had left behind was not the same as the media was portraying at that time. And it was like, if you have visited Pakistan, if any of you have the chance of ever going there, it's a completely different place than what it has been portraying in the media channels. So while I was still, I was still in a shock and disbelief from the news, I didn't know there was a whole kind of conspiracy brewing right outside my house among my neighborhood friends. There was this family whose children I used to watch, so that one of the parents, they started going from door to door telling all my neighbors that, well, she is a Muslim and she is from Pakistan, so she definitely must be a terrorist. And she was going door to door telling everybody that we need to search her house because she could be hiding bombs in there. And it was shocking. And, you hear about these stories down in the South and, in Texas, on all these places. But it just happened right here in Bedford, neighboring town to Lexington. And luckily, we didn't live there for a long time after that. And luckily, nothing happened after that because the rest of my neighbors were very kind and they did not believe anything she said. And they were very nice to me. They came up to me and they were like, what has been happening in your country or with you, we are very sorry, and we have sympathy for you and everything. But it left me wondering that, how many other kind of people out there who believe in such kind of stories that, the media is trying to portray, and how many other people are there who have the kind of thinking that she has, and what if people actually believed her? How would it have ended for me and my family? So it keeps me, thinking that it could have been a different way if people did not actually, respond to it the way they did. So thank you to Human Rights Committee for letting me share that story. And I just hope that the next time you see a woman like me wearing a hijab, instead of, having all these assumptions, you just go up to her and say hello.
Thank you. My name is Victoria Buckley, and I'm the chair of the Commission on Disability for the town. I think what we're talking about is assumptions that hurt and that are not realistic, and they're made by prejudging people, which is what prejudice is. I have a couple of things that I wanted to say. One is that many times people will assume that somebody with a disability must have every disability. So I've been in a wheelchair and people have just been yelling to me because they assume I'm deaf or they'll ask the person next to with me what I would like to eat because I couldn't possibly be, I must be intellectually challenged because I'm in a wheelchair. It's those kinds of assumptions that just are unbelievable. But there are sometimes there are other things that happen, and one that happened in Lexington Center was when I was trying to cross the street. This time I was on my crutches, and I was having a hard time because I have had a broken leg on top of my other disability. So somebody was trying to help me cross the street, and in trying to help me cross the street, they were like actually pushing me into the traffic. It was actually getting dangerous. Crutches dropped. It was like they were dragging me out into traffic. And as I was telling that story at the Commission on Disability, several people on my commission said the same things that happened to them. I think the one that probably hurt the most, and I'm not really proud of my own action with it, but I'll tell you about it anyway, was I was in the Lexington Stop and Shop, and it was a wintry day. It was kind of slippery. It was the road, when it's slippery outside, the grocery store floor is a little slippery. So I was really being careful, trying to get around and get a few things on my crutches. And I went down this aisle, and this woman was in a very long conversation with somebody else. And I asked her if she could move a little bit because I couldn't get by. And she moved a couple of, barely a little bit. I still couldn't get by, so I asked her to move again. And she finally moved, and she went, huh, and moved, and then let me go by. It didn't really dawn on me that I was going to see this person over and over again as I traveled through the aisles. So I went to the next aisle, and there she was again with the same conversation. She wouldn't move. I said, could you please move? I can't get by. And she didn't. She moved just a little bit. I couldn't get by. I said, could you please move? I can't get by. And she turned to her friend and said, I really don't think they should let handicapped people out in this kind of weather in this store in Lexington.
Oh my God.
And I was like, whoa, okay. And I have to admit that my answer was, well, ignorance is a handicap. Does not entitle you to behave this way to other people. And I was like, I was doing anything to stop, not cry, basically. And I turned around, and about 4 other people started clapping. So I think that, which actually made me feel a little bit better. But it was a very negative, hurtful situation. It really was surprising to me that would happen. But there's so many different, there's another story that somebody had from my commission, a member of ours, who was crossing the street at near Wales Copy, and he was in the crosswalk, and a woman came really fast in an SUV, and right in front of him, he had his white cane out. He was very visually impaired, and he was so angry that he went up with the cane, and of course hit the car. And then thought to himself, oh, this is not good. This is not going to end well. So he went and sat down on a bench on the Lexington Green, and sure enough, the police came up and tried to find him. And the female policewoman said to him, well, when something like this happens, we really would prefer it if you'd write down the license plate number. So he looked at her and said, if I could do that, I'd be driving a car. But, that was a very disturbing incident for him and for all of us to hear, and did end up in some sensitivity training for some of the police. But anyway, so I would like to say that if there are complaints about people, children, adults, the Commission on Disability would like to hear those complaints, and we do handle them and take them quite seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all so very much. I'm going to throw out a few questions, and some of you sort of answered. Victoria started already by saying what we're talking about is harm, okay? This is how individual people are harmed on a regular basis, unfortunately. And what should we as a community think about that? And I think these stories are proof that it matters. But I'm going to ask a little bit more. And again, some of you sort of answered these, but volunteered to answer some more. What would you have preferred in any of your circumstances that someone else would have done? And if you shared your story with your inclusive caring circle, what did they say, and how long did that feeling of harm last for you? So there's 3 sort of thrown out there, because it depends on the story you told, which one fits your situation best. But anyone, please feel free to volunteer, or I can start picking on people. Jay, what do you think?
Can you repeat the first part of the question?
So this is harm, right? This is our good neighborly harm that happens on a regular basis, right? So how long did that last for you? If you shared that story with your inclusive caring circle, what was the response to that, and how did they feel? Because I think what's really important is we think this is just a one-off, or that just affected that one person. But I don't think that's true, and I want you to share that.
Well, something that I've actually been thinking about while we've been sitting here is one of the slides earlier about racial bias and how people who experience racism and racial profiling and racial violence have a higher rate of heart disease. For me, I grind my teeth. Because for me, I just kind of really sort of live with, I guess, this kind of low-grade anxiety all the time that for the most part is under the radar, but it's difficult to shake, and within the last year or so my dentist has started commenting on my teeth, and I think that's probably just from being kind of stressed
Yeah, it's
like
impacted
all the
health.
time.
Absolutely.
There are physical impacts. I have to get a night card. So
Thank you. Victoria.
I guess I'm hoping that people don't make assumptions, that instead they ask you if you would like some help, or if there's some way they could be of service, instead of assuming that they know exactly what you need. And that they not make comments like, wow, you're walking well today. It's like, so are you. I mean, what am I supposed to say to that? But, the assumptions just, I don't understand why it has to bubble out like that. But it really is a very harmful thing.
Thank you.
I think
Amber.
this kind of Islamophobia has really kind of shifted people in a way that people are really interested in Islam for some reason now, and it has kind of led it into something positive. Like, if I tell about my story, the neighbors were very, very nice to me after that, and that kind of gave me that hope that not everybody is like her. Not everybody is like that person, and there are many more kind people out there. And when I'm saying kind people out there, I try to volunteer a lot. This story has actually led me to volunteer more in and outside my community, because that way people see the headscarf and they see, okay, these are not the people who are planting bombs inside their houses all the time, but they're actually coming out of their houses and doing something like a social service for the community. And when I'm doing those different soup kitchen, different places in Lexington, you probably see my face a lot here and there. But then when I'm doing that, people just say, Assalamu alaikum, and they're like, Kaiful hal? And they're trying to talk to me in Arabic. I do not know Arabic. I'm from Pakistan. I speak Urdu. I do not know Arabic, but I try to answer them as if I know Arabic. And but that's interesting. Like, people have started to take interest in Islam, and I actually like that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jeffrey.
So when it comes to me, when I've been discriminated and I've seen a lot of hateful behaviors towards people with mental disabilities, there was a time, probably the time I was most insulted by someone else's behavior. It was a time I was heading home from work, I was on the red line, going towards Alewife Station. And there was this on the red line who was saying hate speech towards mentally disabled people, calling them dangerous and saying they shouldn't have guns and they're very terrible, violent people. But that was one of the most insulting things I ever heard. That's probably the time and I was discriminated, my feelings were hurt the most. The truth of the matter is people with mental disabilities are much more the victims of violent crimes. Less than 1% of the mentally ill have created mass shootings. They're much more the victims. And I'll say that was like, if you want like an example of a time I was discriminated the most, that was it. And funny enough, the time of that era when she said that, it was right after the anti-Second Amendment protest in Boston. And wow, my feelings really hurt that day. I mean, and she was teaching her kids to say that stuff too. So it was like one of the most cruel things I'd ever say. You're taking benign people and profiling them as mass murderers. I hate to say it, but it was, what she said was completely wrong. She should not be able to talk that way.
Did any bystanders stick up for you, Jeffrey?
No, I don't think they recognize me. I think they're paying attention to me. But I think to teach your kids to say that stuff, sorry if it ain't right.
I wanted to follow up on what you said. I think one common thread in a lot of these stories is the need for an upstander, and the realization that we are all in that role all the time. The amount of hate speech that you see online has really, manifested itself and has changed the nature of discourse in our community and in our country in the last 10, 20 years. And the result is that we actually have to do more work, right? It's incumbent upon us to actually speak out and say something in many instances, whether it's on the T, whether it's in your neighborhood, wherever we are. And the Talmud, one of the great Jewish texts, says that if you're silent in the face of inappropriate behavior, then that is equivalent to acquiescence. You are agreeing with that behavior, and then you're guilty. And being silent in the face of all these kinds of things and more, that's really the biggest danger that we face. We see it in listservs. You can see it in the way people speak to each other on the internet, the kind of things. And unfortunately, we see it a lot with kids who say things, that are harmful. And it's incumbent upon all of us that when we see something, we immediately speak out in every situation. That's the only way to really affect some more change.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm going to get to you in 1 second, Peter. I just want to let you know that the library has hosted 2 or 3 active bystander trainings that I know Feng Ying is trained. I am trained. Valley Overton, who's here today, is trained and teaches those classes. And I'm sure that if you ask, the library will be more than happy to promote another one and ask us to come out and do another training. And Peter, I'm going to jump right to you.
Sure.
Val just said there's one in January, so we will get that information to you at the end. Thanks, Val.
So I just wanted to add, sort of follow up what the rabbi was saying. When Cal was first formed in '83, there were not a lot of Asians in town, and one of the things that we really, at the beginning, we thought we need to provide a voice. We need to represent Asians in town, town meeting, or on boards and committees. And so we've been focusing on, drafting town meeting members, getting people involved in the community, just sort of on the thought that Lexington is a town of volunteers. And if you volunteer in your area of strength, whatever you feel comfortable with, the more exposure there is in town, not just of Asians, but obviously Cal is trying to promote that. It would be helpful, and it would contribute to society, to the town, and it would get you out there as well. And so we thought that was a very positive thing. Obviously now there's quite a few more Asians in town. Cal is one of 2 Chinese organizations, so clearly there's probably not a lot of work that we need to do in terms of representing anymore. It's more helping Asians fit in, assimilate, and contribute to society.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna ask one more question. This is gonna go to skills. How can we disagree without being disagreeable? And how can we be polite and state our case without watering down our point? Anybody have thoughts? Yeah, jump in. Thank you.
So I think one of the key things we need to do as a community is to find more opportunities to get to know someone and to ask them questions. Maybe one of those children would ask you, Jay, well, what does that mean, that descriptor that you offer to them? And I think that we should try, and it's not always easy, but to approach each moment and each person from a place of curiosity. And be curious about them and ask them questions. And that goes to what was said earlier about making assumptions that we often do. And if you ask someone about themselves and you're curious and have that orientation, it can, create a different kind of openness. And even when you disagree, to ask someone, tell me a little bit more about why you hold that perspective, really changes the nature of the conversation and the interaction. So that can hopefully lead to a different kind of engagement.
Thank you. Jay?
Something I think about a lot is intent versus impact, and intent and impact. And so something that you hear a lot is that, your intent doesn't matter, your impact is what matters. I didn't mean to stab you in the back, but now my knife is there. But I didn't mean to, so what are you gonna do about it? But I also think that people are very quick to be defensive of their kind of ideology of their self as a good person. Like, I'm not racist, I'm not homophobic, so therefore I couldn't possibly say something or do something that would harm you. And if you accuse me of such a thing, well, then now, you're coming after me. And it just makes for a really unpleasant interaction, and it makes it really scary to let people know that they have done something that was hurtful. So I think that people need to, work on letting go of the idea that the person that you want to be is who you are, and get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because talking about privilege and oppression from both sides of the line is uncomfortable, and as the rabbi was saying, the creating an actual relationship with a person is really important, and that is the place where I think that intent makes a difference, because if you say something or do something harmful, and you intended for it to be harmful, then we can't have a relationship. You're out. But if you say something harmful, but you meant well, or you said it out of ignorance, then that, to me, you are potentially a person who is able to learn from that mistake and not do it again, and you want to not be harmful. But then when the response to, hey, you just did something that caused me harm is, but I couldn't possibly, and then it becomes an unpleasant interaction. It's an unpleasant interaction. But so, it takes bravery on the side of the harmed party to reach out and speak up and say, hello, person that I may or may not know, may or may not care about, may or may not want in my life, you just did something that was a problem. And then it takes the person who did the thing that was a problem to be put their protectiveness of themselves aside, and
Be willing to listen.
and be grateful that somebody has given you this learning opportunity. And we're all on some side of privilege and oppression, on some identity line somewhere. So we all have the opportunity to be the oppressed and the oppressor, most of us.
Awesome. Thank you. Victoria, thank you.
I think we have to be aware of our own implicit biases. We all have them, and there's lots of different ways that you can figure those out. There's even things online that you can take an implicit bias test. One's offered by Harvard, and it's interesting because once you are aware of where your lines and your implicit bias is, you become more aware of how you're treating other people, and you become more aware of how to be kind. And I think that's important.
I think that's huge. I have a couple things that triggered for me, which is Rabbi Lerner, you mentioned online stuff, and I know that Temple Amuna is going to host in the spring Screenagers 2. The first Screenagers was here in Lexington a year or two ago, and this will be the second go around with the second level, and they're going to be hosting it in the spring, so look for that. The Lexington Human Rights Committee has been asked to look at Not in Our Town, and we have been in connection with the West Coast, who created the program. It's a program. They also have a Not in the Schools program, but the Not in the Town program takes a whole lot of work from a lot of people in town. So we'll be asking all of our amazing volunteers who we dragged here today to reach out to their communities, and all of you to reach out. And if you think that this would be a program which has been in a lot of towns, and I encourage you to jump online, Not in Our Town, NIOT.org. And if you think that would be something that you would like to see here in Lexington, please send an email to the Human Rights Committee. We are on the website. You can click us if you Google us. You can find us. You can just send us an email and say something to any of your select board members, or even to your school committee members, but particularly to your Board of Selectmen or Select Board. Not sure where we are with that yet. But let them know that that's something that you want to see and that you think that would be helpful in our town, because we would love to do that. And that's all about kindness, and it's all about stopping harm before it happens and before it escalates into a problem. With that, I'm going to say thank you all so very, very much for sharing your stories and your comments. And I'm going to ask Georgia to come up and do a quick close.
Hi everyone, my name is Georgia Swan. I think we can all agree that those stories were very powerful, and that we're very grateful to our panelists for sharing those with us. I'm just here to make an introduction and to talk about how Lexington is making strides towards being that shining city on a hill, and we have several initiatives, including educating people on the value that all human beings hold in our community. I thought I had a slide.
There's a slide.
Oh, I don't know how to do that.
I got to join.
Enter?
There we go.
Okay, here we go. Right. Got it. Okay. Yeah, so educating people on the value that all human beings hold in our community. Provide a vulnerable person and groups with resources and recourses when they're targets of bullying or harassment. To demand equal rights and respect for all individuals. And to be an active bystander by standing up against anyone who uses any hateful words or behaviors towards anyone in the community. And yeah, so a number of our Lexington public schools are focusing on kindness in these mindset initiatives. And we want to especially appreciate Bridge, Estabrook, and Clark. They are incorporating No Hate November. And Diamond is working on exploring Not in Our Schools. So with that, I'd like to introduce Colette Powell, who will tell you about such initiatives.
Hi gang, so I'm going to talk briefly about understanding our differences, which was really interesting hearing you all talk because about 4 years ago, a group of 4 parents who all had kids with disabilities were sitting around here sharing war stories. And we were like, wouldn't it be great if our school had a disability awareness curriculum for kids? Because I think a lot of the issues start with little kids, and that's the perfect time to kind of educate them and let them know it's okay to ask questions and how to talk about differences in a healthy way. So, we decided to kind of stop talking and start trying to actually do something. So fast forward a year, and we met with our principal at Harrington and pitched her a disabilities curriculum. And she was very supportive and decided to fund our first 2 units of the Understanding Our Differences curriculum. Understanding Our Differences is a disability awareness curriculum for 3rd to 5th graders that was started in Newton about 40 years ago. So if anyone grew up in Newton, you might have gone through it. And it's all parent run, which was very important to us as well. And so each unit, it covers things from intellectual disabilities and autism to chronic medical conditions to learning disabilities and physical disabilities. So a broad spectrum of disabilities. And the classes come in, and it's a 2-hour time block where they start with some presentations. They do small group activities to help them kind of understand what it's like to live with a disability. And then it ends with a speaker who has the disability we're discussing. And they get to ask them whatever questions they want. And that's generally the best part. And we've been really lucky to find most of our speakers as residents or students within Lexington, which is also wonderful. So the importance of parent-driven, I thought was also really interesting listening to the panel. I think that helps us for 2 reasons. One, it's been a pretty easy sell to a lot of the schools. It's pretty easy to go in and say, give me a block of 2 hours of time, and we'll take care of the rest, which makes it a lot easier to get implemented. The second thing is that a lot of the times I think, when I think of my son and the interactions with him, it's parents that often get in the way. Right? Kids are curious and they want to ask questions, and it's often the parents who are worried about not knowing how to talk about things or not wanting to offend anyone that stop the kids from asking those questions. And what's wonderful about a parent-run program is the parents come in and get trained on how to run these activities and how to talk about things. And then they're there and they get to watch their kids do these programs and hopefully can kind of pull that forward into the community and talk to their friends and neighbors about it. And it's been really successful at Harrington. And we were lucky enough, based on that success, to have Dr. Hackett fund the program for the entire district. So she bought the full curriculum and everyone has access to it starting this year. We have 2 schools on board now. Hopefully we will have 4 by year end, but if anyone out there has a student in an elementary school and wants to get involved, please get in touch with me through CPAC. I'm the CPAC secretary, so you can find my email there. And let me know, because as much as if we have administrative support, we still need kind of active parents to help push this out. But I'm hoping in the next couple of years that we just
Hello, everybody. First, I want to thank Human Rights for putting this on. This was incredible, and also the panelists. Thank you so much for sharing your powerful stories today. It's wonderful. I just want to talk real quickly about Human Services. My name is Anthony Siri. I'm the Assistant Director of Youth and Family Services for the town. Just to tell you a little bit about what we can do, we work with residents of Lexington of any age, gender, or as long as you're a resident of Lexington, we can work with you on accessing resources, whether that's information referral for mental health services, looking into utility help. We do fuel assistance through the community center, as well as a number of other programming. I brought some handouts for you in the back. We also partner with NAMI, which is the National Alliance on Mental Illness, as well as William James Interface, which I should mention to you all. If you are a Lexington resident and are interested in getting mental health treatment, you can call the Interface Referral Helpline and be connected to a therapist. It's a very unique opportunity for Lexington residents, and it's also free. So I highly recommend it. I'll be here a little bit after, so if any of you have any questions or would like to speak with me, I look forward to talking with you all. Thank you.
So I'm Mona Roy. I'm the chair of the Human Rights Committee, and I wanted to first thank all of you for coming out on this rainy night to share this evening with us. And I just wanted to, we talked about a few different things today, and putting it all together, we try to hit all of these things as the Human Rights Committee. We try to educate people through our programming, such as our No Hate November programming. This is a brand new initiative. We had a very successful family-friendly one, and we had this wonderful evening. We also have the MLK Day Community Conversation on Race. As Tanya mentioned, we're working on Not in Our Schools and Not in Our Town, and then in June we'll have a celebration for Race Amity Day. We also try to provide vulnerable persons with resources. We're very fortunate to have Lexington Human Services, and we are also here, similar to what Victoria said, if you have an incident, any sort of hate incident or any concern, please come to us and we will, depending on what it is and what's happening, we can definitely try to help you. The fourth one's a little tricky. We can't do this alone. We can only demand equal rights and respect all individuals by understanding where we can provide support to vulnerable people. So we're here to provide support, but we really need the community at large to provide support. And finally, for being an active bystander, Tanya already alluded to this, we are offering, there's already some active bystander training being offered. I think Valerie's mentioned that there might be one. And then the Human Rights Committee, in the back, you can sign up and put your name on a mailing list if you would like to sign up for active bystander training. And we have multiple people who are trained to do that. And when we get enough people, we'll hold a class. So that's pretty much who we are and what we do. And I would also like to close out this evening because we promised all of you that you would have a chance to interact with the panelists. First, I would like to thank our panelists for being so gracious and generous and kind with their time and sharing their stories. There was some humor, but some heartbreak as well, and we're very grateful that you were willing to open up your stories and your hearts to us to share this evening. I really want to specifically thank our Vice Chair and Moderator, Tanya, who was for sure roped into this, but did an incredible job. I think she deserves an applause. I would like to thank Christine from the Cary Library. She's in the back hiding over there. She really set everything up. We've never done this before, and I definitely haven't done this before. So this is really thanks to her that we've even gotten this done. Thank you so much, Christine. No Hate November programming was brought to you by the No Hate November subgroup of the Human Rights Committee, and the co-chairs for that were Fuang Ying Hong. Where'd she go? Where is she? She's somewhere here. Oh, there, stand up. So and Jeffrey Toronto, who started this whole initiative. So I'd also like to thank LexMedia for taking the time to come film this. For those of you who are watching this on TV, it's thanks to them. And I would definitely like to thank this respectful audience for being kind enough to share this evening with us. If you are interested in receiving human rights mailings, if you're interested in getting active bystander training or anything else, you can sign up back there and in that spiral notebook because I couldn't really come up with it on the computer. So thank you so much. Is there something I'm missing? Oh yes, and Tanya graciously made feedback forms so that we don't have to hear. If you had any complaints, don't tell us. Totally put it on back there. Do not tell us.
There's a basket in the back.
Be kind.
Stick it in there.
Be kind. Don't tell us whatsoever. Instead, put it here anonymously where we could say, "Oh, I'm sure that person did." We actually really want your feedback. This is our first year of doing this program. We weren't even sure if people wanted this kind of programming. We just didn't know, and looks like people did. So thank you very much. Thank you.